One engine was cut off. A second later, the other followed. No warning, no engine power, and nothing the crew could do. The aircraft had just left the runway, 241 lives on board. At that altitude, there was nowhere to go but down. This is the crash of Air India Flight 171, and the truth may lie in one of three unsettling theories. Most eyes have been on the final theory, but let's begin with one people quietly cling to, not because it holds up, but because the alternative is far more disturbing. The first theory asks a simple question: could this have been just a glitch? That somehow, without any input, both engines shut down on their own. Some believe it's possible that maybe the aircraft systems malfunctioned in a way no one expected. But when you look at how the 787 is designed, that theory starts to fall apart. First, the timing. The 787 has no system that can shut down both engines, especially not one after the other, with a perfect 1-second gap. That kind of precision doesn't come from code. It comes from someone in the cockpit moving the switch. Second, the switches themselves. These aren't buttons you can accidentally hit. They're spring-loaded and guarded. They require 3 deliberate actions: pull, lift, rotate. If they moved, someone moved them. Because there's no system on this aircraft that can flip them remotely, and no fault that could force them through all 3 steps. Third, Boeing said nothing. When a serious system failure occurs, manufacturers issue a bulletin, a formal notice that outlines the fault, its severity, and how to fix it. It's distributed across the entire aviation network, from engineers to flight crews. For instance, after the Lion Air crash in 2018, Boeing released a bulletin within a week, warning pilots about faulty sensor readings. It included new procedures to follow if those errors appeared again. Yet after Flight 171, nothing. What does that tell us? It suggests there was no system fault to report. The aircraft didn't malfunction, it followed an order, and that order didn't come from software, it came from inside that cockpit. Now let's consider a scenario where no one meant to cause harm, but something still went terribly wrong. This theory suggests the crash was caused not by sabotage, but by a tragic mistake. Climb out is one of the busiest moments in aviation. Pilots are juggling altitude, speed, checklists, and radio calls, all within the first 60 seconds after liftoff. Some believe that during this high workload moment, a wrong switch may have been flipped. Maybe they were troubleshooting. Maybe it was just pressure at the worst time. We don't know what triggered it, but we do know what followed. Both engines shut down, one after the other. And then came the only words from the cockpit. "Why did you cut off?" That isn't a standard call-out. It's not part of any checklist. It sounds like surprise and confusion. In a properly coordinated cockpit, critical actions are never taken solo. They're announced, confirmed, cross-checked. That didn't happen here. 13 seconds later, both switches were turned back to run, a sign the crew may have realized what happened and tried to recover. But by then, it was likely too late. If this theory is true, it paints a haunting picture, a momentary slip in the worst possible moment, an accident with irreversible consequences. So, could that have happened? Maybe, but some things just don't sit right. Because even if one pilot made a mistake, what about the other? Why wasn't it caught? Why wasn't it called out? In modern cockpits, every critical action must be verbalized and confirmed. Yet here we only hear one line: "Why did you cut off?" No challenge, no checklist, just silence. And then there's the timing. This wasn't a chaotic scramble. The shutdown was clean. Engine 1, then 1 second later, engine 2. It doesn't feel like panic. It feels coordinated. And that's what makes this theory hard to hold on to. Because shutting down both engines here during climb-out isn't just risky, it's catastrophic. And if it was a mistake, it was an incredibly precise one. And that raises the most chilling possibility of all. What if it was planned? If someone wanted to bring down an aircraft, this is the moment they'd choose. Not mid-cruise, where there's time and altitude. Not before takeoff, where the aircraft hasn't yet committed to the sky. But right here, seconds after liftoff, where the plane has no altitude to glide, no time to abort, and no chance to restart. A window so narrow, you only get one shot, and whoever moved those switches, if it was deliberate, picked it perfectly. So, the question is, why? Was it confusion, or something no one could have predicted? We don't know the pilot's mindset. We don't know what was said in those last moments, but we do know what the data shows. The engines were shut down in sequence, 1 second apart. The switches used required deliberate physical action. No system on the 787 can do that automatically. And Boeing has released no bulletin, no warning to other airlines. It leaves us with one conclusion, or at least one possibility. This wasn't caused by a system. It wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It was a command from inside the cockpit, in the one moment no one could recover from. Is that what really happened? We don't know. Not yet. But this theory exists for a reason, because when everything else falls away, this is what's left. Everything in this video is based on the preliminary report, and that means it could all change. We know what was done, we know how it ended, but why remains the hardest question of all. Until the full report is released, every explanation is still just a theory, even this one. This case has left a lot of questions. Feel free to share your thoughts below, and let's keep the discussion respectful and open. Because at the heart of this were 260 people. Among them were passengers, crew, and people on the ground. They never got to ask why. They never got a second chance. We owe them the truth, or at the very least, the search for it. May they rest in peace.